This lake belongs to the community now. That's what she announced, right there on my family's private dock, with 30 neighbors watching her like she was Queen Elizabeth planting a flag on conquered land. I remember the exact moment, the sun glinting off her perfectly curled hair, the pale yellow blazer, and that cold, calculating look in her eyes as she claimed the one thing I thought was truly mine. She had no idea that I wasn't just standing there listening. I was recording every single word, every breath, every arrogant smirk. My name is Ethan Hayes, and for almost 2 decades, I was the guy you called to build an airtight case against people who thought they were untouchable, a deep-dive financial investigator specializing in insurance fraud, staged car crashes, falsified medical claims, workplace injuries that happened at a dirt bike track. I specialized in connecting the dots, in finding the lie hidden beneath layers of paperwork. I retired early, burnout at 43, because years of watching people lie for a living had eroded something fundamental in me. I couldn't tell anymore if I was protecting the truth or just becoming relentlessly cynical. So, when my grandfather left me the cabin, a quiet, isolated place nestled in the Pine Valley Preserve, I didn't hesitate. I sold my condo, drove 7 hours north, and arrived seeking silence. The lake was 3 perfect acres of hammered glass, just me, the sounds of birds I couldn't name, and the gentle lapping of waves against the old cedar dock. The property included a 2-acre natural pond, Lake Heron, all mine, according to a deed dated 1968. Grandpa built this place with his own hands. I learned to fish here, learned that the best conversations sometimes happen without words, and those memories felt like artifacts from a different, calmer life. I thought I was finally free of the game, free of the paperwork and the liars, but I should have known better. The welcome packet from the Pine Valley Estates HOA seemed standard, rules about paint colors, lawn maintenance, all the usual suburban busybody stuff that I thought wouldn't touch my isolated plot. That was my first mistake, believing I could be isolated. My second, and much bigger mistake, was underestimating Veronica Sterling. She arrived on my second morning, exactly at 9:15 a.m., riding a pristine white utility cart, dressed like she was attending a yacht club brunch, all sharp edges and expensive tailoring. She smiled, but it was purely cosmetic. Her eyes stayed cold, already slotting me into a box she'd decided I belonged in. "Welcome to Pine Valley Estates, Mr. Hayes," she chirped, handing me a thick, glossy binder, easily 2 inches of rules. "I'm Veronica Sterling, HOA president. We have very specific standards here, and we find that new residents really appreciate having everything spelled out." The way she used the word appreciate made it sound like an order, not a courtesy. I flipped through the pages, rules about acceptable window coverings, mailbox designs, a detailed chart of approved exterior stains that apparently didn't include the natural cedar of my cabin. I kept my voice neutral, letting her talk, years of interviewing reluctant claimants kicking in. "This is quite comprehensive," I murmured. Then, her gaze drifted past me, fixing on my old, faded red canoe, the same one Grandpa and I used to paddle. Her smile tightened, turning predatory. "I see you have a canoe. That's charming. Though, I should mention, watercraft colors need to conform to our aesthetic guidelines. That particular shade of crimson, it's rather jarring." "It's on my private property," I stated, gesturing toward the water. "Lake Heron is entirely within my property line, clearly outlined in the deed." She gave a light, dismissive laugh, the kind that makes your teeth itch. "I think there's been a misunderstanding, Mr. Hayes. All properties in Pine Valley fall under HOA jurisdiction. That includes water features. We updated our shared resource policy, Section 9, in 2021. Deeds can be superseded by community covenants. It's all in the binder. We all make small sacrifices for the greater good of the community, don't we?" She gave a small wave and drove off, leaving me standing there with 2 pounds of regulations and a bad feeling that wasn't fear, but recognition. I knew a con artist when I heard one. This wasn't about the color of my canoe. This was about testing boundaries, about asserting dominance. I spent the rest of the day in my office, not out fishing. I read every single one of those bylaws. Most of it was standard bureaucratic nonsense, but Section 9, the one covering shared visual landscape and resources affecting collective property values, was deliberately vague, elastic enough to be twisted any way Veronica wanted. It had passed in 2021 with only 6 members voting. 6 people rewriting property rights while the rest of the community was distracted. I felt something familiar click into place, a muscle memory from my old life. I photographed the highlighted section, then my deed, then the original 1968 survey map. I created a new encrypted folder on my laptop titled Project Sterling. If Veronica wanted to play games with property rights and community standards, I would play, but I would play by the rules she didn't know existed yet. The red canoe stayed right where it was, a stop sign on the water. The first skirmish happened at the community meeting. I walked in late, taking a seat in the 3rd row. Veronica was up front, flanked by 3 women in pastels, her backup choir, reading off a list of petty violations with an almost sexual enjoyment. When her eyes landed on me, her smile sharpened into a triumphant glint. "Ah, wonderful, Mr. Hayes decided to join us. I was just about to bring up your property." She demanded I repaint the canoe within 10 days or remove it, citing significant aesthetic concern and a drop in property values. I stood up, holding my phone with the deed displayed. I reviewed the property deed, Miss Sterling. Lake Heron was registered as private property in 1968, 3 decades before this HOA was established. That predates any community covenant. The room went dead quiet. People shifted nervously, looking down. Veronica didn't waver. She leaned forward slightly, that classic power move. "The law evolves, Mr. Hayes. Our Section 9 bylaw clearly establishes community oversight of shared resources. Your lake falls under that category. If you're concerned, you're welcome to consult an attorney. Though, I should mention, HOA legal challenges are typically very expensive. We have a substantial legal fund." The threat wasn't subtle. "Fight me, and I will bleed you dry with paperwork and fees." I knew that tactic. Insurance adjusters used it all the time to deny legitimate claims. Most people give up because fighting bureaucracy is exhausting. "I'll consider my options," I said, staying calm. Veronica's smile widened, triumphant. She thought I was backing down. After the meeting, an older man named Walter Reed, who smelled faintly of sawdust and pine, caught me in the parking lot. "Mr. Hayes, I live over on Willow Way. You need to be warned about Veronica. She goes after people. Last year, the Millers, they had a dispute over a shed height. She made their lives a living hell with fines and violations until they sold the house at a loss and moved away. She's connected. The mayor's brother-in-law is on the council. You can't win against that kind of power. Why doesn't anyone vote her out?" I asked. Walter gave a humorless laugh. "You saw the meeting. Who's going to stand up? Most folks just keep their heads down. It's easier that way. Let the canoe thing go. It's not worth it." I drove home, thinking about Walter's tired eyes and Veronica's casual cruelty. She hadn't made assumptions about my wealth or my connections. She had assumed I was like everyone else, someone who would calculate the cost of fighting and choose peace. She didn't know I had spent 18 years creating the cost of fighting for people who lied, that I was intimately familiar with how bureaucracy could be weaponized and, more importantly, how it could be defeated. That night, the investigator in me woke up completely. I wasn't going to repaint the canoe, and I wasn't going to sue. Not yet. Litigation was the last resort. I was going to do what I did best, document everything. Build the case piece by piece. I started setting up cameras, small, high-definition, wide-angle lenses disguised in the eaves and pine trees, just enough to record who came onto my property, when, and what they said. The first fine arrived on official HOA letterhead, $750 for violation of approved watercraft color standards. 2 weeks later, another notice, $1,500, with bold text warning of foreclosure proceedings. Frightening. If you didn't know, a lien required actual legal justification, not just printed threats on fancy paper. I photographed both, logged the dates, and filed them with the rest of my evidence. Then, the social campaign began. A neighbor showed me her phone. Veronica had posted on the Pine Valley Residents Circle, 200 members strong. "Neighbors, our new resident on Lake Heron Drive has refused to comply with basic standards. His unwillingness to make small compromises raises concerns about whether he respects our shared values." The comments were worse than the post. Complaints about garish colors, dropping property values, and suggestions that if I didn't like the rules, I should move. She was isolating me socially, making sure the community would see me as the problem when she escalated. And escalate she did. The physical trespassing started on a sunny Saturday. I woke up to the sound of voices and saw Veronica with two other board members setting up a folding table, chairs, and a cooler right on my dock. I walked down, still in my coffee-stained shirt. "Morning," I said. Veronica looked up, radiating pleasant fakery. "Oh, Mr. Hayes. We're just enjoying the community lake. Such a beautiful day." "This is private property," I said, keeping my voice low and level. "You're trespassing." She laughed again, a manufactured, dismissive sound. Now, we discussed this. The lake is a shared community resource under Section 9. We are simply exercising our rights as residents. I could see the anticipation in her eyes, the readiness for the explosion, the moment I would yell and make threats while she played the reasonable victim. I knew she was recording this somehow. I did the hardest thing I've ever done in a confrontation. I smiled. "Enjoy your afternoon," I said, and walked back to my cabin. I watched them through the window for the next hour. It was pure performance. They kept looking toward the cabin, clearly disappointed I hadn't given them the scene she wanted. They took photos, posed by the water, then packed up and left, leaving footprints and chair marks, evidence of occupation. My cameras had captured all of it. High-definition video with time-synced audio, Veronica talking about community rights, her admission that this was about establishing shared access. The trespassing had crossed a line. Now it was a criminal offense. Every time she or her friends set foot on my property without permission, they were building a case against themselves. But the real core of the trap lay in the numbers. As a dues-paying member, I had the legal right to request the HOA's financial records. I submitted a formal written request, citing the specific state statute that guaranteed member access. They stalled for 3 weeks, then sent me sanitized summaries. I replied, requesting the full transaction records, bank statements, canceled checks, vendor invoices, every receipt for every dollar spent in the past 3 years. 2 weeks later, the records arrived, boxes of paper copies, disorganized in a way meant to overwhelm and intimidate. It motivated me. I spent 3 days scanning everything, running OCR software, and building a searchable database. That's when the pattern jumped out at me. Over the past 24 months, $82,000 had been paid to a law firm under legal expenses. But cross-referencing this with HOA meeting minutes showed only $12,000 had been approved by a vote for actual community legal matters. That left $70,000 in unauthorized legal fees. Then, another line item, Lakeshore Maintenance, total payments of $15,000 to a company called Lakeview Dynamics. I ran a state business entity search. Lakeview Dynamics was registered 9 months before the first payment, with one listed owner, the sister of Veronica's board secretary. No website, no reviews, just a P.O. box address. It was a shell company. Misappropriation. Embezzlement. The people who claimed to protect the community were stealing from it. I then hired a licensed surveyor, paid him to confirm the boundaries. His formal report was definitive. My property line extended 20 feet past the far side of Lake Heron. Every inch of the water was mine. The HOA had absolutely no legal footing. But I still wasn't ready. Catching a thief is one thing. Getting them to commit the crime so blatantly that no lawyer can spin it into an innocent misunderstanding requires patience. So, I sent Veronica an email. Polite, measured. I wrote that I was considering allowing limited community access, under certain terms, and would she be willing to discuss. I wanted to see if she'd interpret my offer as weakness, if she'd escalate one last time. Her response came within the hour. "Mr. Hayes, I appreciate your willingness to finally be reasonable. However, the community doesn't need your permission to access what's already ours under established covenants. I'll continue managing the lake as I see fit." She couldn't help herself. Perfect. Interpreting my cooperation as capitulation, Veronica announced on the community forum that access to Lake Heron would be expanded for summer activities. She created a sign-up sheet for swimming and canoeing on my property. The trespassing increased immediately. Where before it was tactical, now it was genuine. Families with inflatable toys, teenagers having an impromptu swimming party. All of it captured on camera. They left trash, moved my canoe, and even broke a section of the old dock railing. All of it documented. The climax came when Veronica organized the official event, Pine Valley Community Lake Day. Kayak races, a catered barbecue, activities planned from 10 a.m. until sunset. She even contacted the local paper, pitching it as a story about community spirit. The article ran a week before the event, featuring a photo of Veronica standing on my dock, arms spread wide. She never mentioned the lake wasn't hers to share. I saved the article. The trap was set. Veronica had committed to a public event on property she didn't own, advertised it to the press, and created a paper trail showing clear intent to permanently claim the lake. She was collecting money for the catered event using the same community funds she'd already been misappropriating. I made 3 calls. First, to the district attorney's office, filing a formal complaint supported by over 30 pages of financial records. Second, to the state HOA compliance agency. Third, to a property rights attorney, giving him the call to file the preliminary injunction and the civil complaint for trespass and conversion. The morning of Community Lake Day, Veronica sent one final email. Subject line, final warning. She threatened immediate legal action, fines, and foreclosure for willful interference. The email ended. I suggest you use this day to reflect on whether you truly want to be part of this community. I saved the email. The folder now contained over 200 documented instances of trespassing, financial misconduct, and abuse of authority. I replied with a single word, filed. Community Lake Day started exactly on schedule. By 10:30 a.m., there were at least 50 people on my property. Veronica was near the dock in a pristine white linen outfit, directing activities like a hostess at her estate. 2 local news camera crews were filming. I watched for 20 minutes, then got in my truck and drove to the attorney's office. When I got back at 11:45 a.m., 3 sheriff's department vehicles were parked on the road. The music had stopped. People were gathering their things with confused, worried expressions. A deputy was speaking to Veronica near the dock, reading from a document. Mrs. Sterling, you need to understand. This property is privately owned. You and all these people are currently trespassing. You are in violation of a restraining order served this morning. Veronica's voice was shrill, losing its smooth control. This is absurd. I'm the HOA president. This is a shared resource under our covenants. The deputy shook his head. Ma'am, I have a surveyor's report and property deed here. This lake is entirely on private property. You are in violation. She spun around and saw me. The shock on her face was immediate, visceral. Her composure evaporated. You, she whispered. You did this. You set me up. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. Another county investigator arrived soon after, carrying a folder from the DA's office. Mrs. Sterling, we need to speak with you about allegations of embezzlement and misappropriation of HOA funds. We have documentation of $70,000 in unauthorized legal expenses and $15,000 paid to a shell company with no evidence of services rendered. The color drained from her face. No, this is a misunderstanding. I've been protecting this community. One of her backup choir members, a woman named Carol, stepped forward. What is happening, Veronica? What are they talking about? The investigator looked at Carol. Are you on the HOA board, ma'am? Then we'll need to speak with you too. All board members. We are investigating a potential conspiracy to defraud homeowners. The board member's face went pale. An older resident from the crowd shouted, How much money did you steal from us? Veronica turned, trying to regain control. I didn't steal anything. I was trying to maintain standards. I spoke for the first time, my voice calm, quiet, but carrying clearly in the sudden silence. The documentation shows otherwise. Systematic harassment of residents who didn't comply, using HOA authority as a personal weapon. That's not maintaining standards, Veronica. That's maintaining control. I watched something collapse behind her eyes. The performance was over. The authority was gone. The deputies started clearing people off my property. The whole scene took about 2 hours. The TV crews filmed every minute. The system worked, but only because I had known how to work the system. The legal process took 3 months. The DA's office didn't have to build the case. I had already built it for them. Veronica was indicted on 3 counts, with the extortion charge sticking as a felony. She negotiated a plea agreement to avoid trial. 18 months of supervised probation, 300 hours of community service, $75,000 in fines and restitution, and a 10-year ban from serving on any HOA board in the state. The civil case was more straightforward. The judge reviewed the surveyor's report, the deed, and the video evidence, ruling in my favor on every point. Veronica was personally liable for $165,000 in damages, covering my legal fees, property damage, and compensation for intentional infliction of emotional distress. She had to sell her expensive house, the very foundation of her perceived authority, to pay it all. Walter Reed, the neighbor who warned me, was elected the new HOA president. Section 9 was repealed unanimously. I didn't do this for revenge. I did it because property rights matter, and because authority without accountability becomes tyranny. I realized that my retirement wasn't about escaping the fight. It was about choosing which fights were worth having and fighting them on my own terms. I created a small fund from the settlement money, not much, about $25,000, and published a detailed, anonymous guide online for people dealing with their own Veronicas, detailing how to document, request records, and file complaints. I sit on the dock now, months later. The lake is quiet. The red canoe still bobs next to the pier, a bright, defiant spot of color. I got the silence I wanted, but it feels different, less like an escape and more like earned peace. I realize that rights aren't self-enforcing. They require active defense, constant vigilance, and a willingness to fight when necessary. The world isn't divided into good people and bad people. It's divided into people who respect boundaries and people who keep pushing until someone, finally, pushes back. I was quiet. I avoided conflict when possible. But quiet and weak are different things. Silence can be strategic. Patience can be dangerous. The one who stays calm, who documents everything, usually wins. That was the last lesson the game had to teach me. Tell me, have you ever dealt with a Veronica in your community, your workplace, or your family? What was the moment you realized you had to stop seeking peace and start building a case? Drop a comment below and share your story, and let's talk about the true cost of justice. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about how the system works and how we can make it work for us.